property prices have rebounded. The Herald Sun claiming that Melbourne home prices have recovered the value that was lost during the post-COVID downturn. So that's great news if you're someone looking to sell your place at the moment. Don't know whether it's so good for those wanting to buy into the market. And mixed news, I guess, there, because the federal government's 5% deposit rule for first home buyers starts today. Very mixed, whichever way you look at it. Leith Van Onselen is the chief economist and co-founder of Macro Business. Leith Van Onselen. Good morning, Leith.
G'day, Tony. How are you?
Yeah, going well, thanks. Now, the property prices up, which, as I said, is great news if you're looking to sell your place.
Yeah, obviously great news if you're looking to sell your place, but most people that are selling their home then need to buy another one unless you're an investor. So obviously it's a double whammy, and then you end up just paying more in stamp duty. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword there, and obviously not great if you're looking into the market. No,
so let's just take it step by step. So what would your advice be? So if someone is looking to, say they think to themselves, look, I want to downsize or whatever, and as you say, it is a catch-22 with stamp duty and all that sort of thing. Would you recommend someone to actually sell their place, then rent for a while and just wait for a bit of a downturn?
Look, probably not at the moment, because unfortunately I think the prices are going to rocket. Unfortunately, because obviously we've seen a whole series of interest rate cuts, but also this 5% deposit scheme, which has come in today from the federal government, is just going to put rocket fuel on the housing market, unfortunately. So I think we're looking at a period of very strong price growth, which is exactly not what you need when you've got one of the most expensive housing markets in the world.
So when you say very strong price growth, going back to what, pre-COVID proportions?
Well, potentially, yes. So basically, home prices are already at the most expensive level in history across the nation. Melbourne, we've lagged a bit, but this 5% deposit scheme has been modelled by a mob called Lateral Economics, and they think it could actually increase home prices by about 10% alone. So it's going to add rocket fuel to the fire, because basically a whole bunch of people who weren't able to get into the market are now going to enter the market. And they're going to borrow larger amounts than they could have otherwise, and that's just going to add more buyers and more demand and just lift up home prices. So it's a pretty bad policy from an affordability perspective, because it's ultimately just going to make homes more expensive.
So essentially, we just can't cope as a market because there's just not enough homes being built at the moment anyway, is there?
That's right, yeah. So obviously the government's running a very, very strong immigration program. It's bringing in far more people than we can build homes for. And as a result, we've got an ongoing rental crisis and a perpetual housing shortage. So it's just a really diabolical situation we have here.
A diabolical situation?
Absolutely. It is absolute. The housing affordability across the country has never been worse than it is now. And unfortunately, households are paying record share of their incomes on rents. And also, obviously, home prices are at extraordinary highs. The average home in Australia now is valued at $1,035,000. That's across the whole country, which is just an absurd price. And these sorts of policies are just going to make the situation even worse, unfortunately.
Okay, so what is the solution then? What needs to be done from a policy point of view?
Well, obviously, policies like these should never be done, because all they end up...
You're talking about the 5% deposit, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. It's an absolute disaster. So what it means is that, if you fast forward 5 years down the track and this policy has been capitalised into home prices, so home prices will rise. It means future first home buyers will end up buying a home, paying more than they would have otherwise, with smaller deposits and carrying larger mortgages. They just end up paying more of their lifetime earnings on housing. Also, the federal government needs to dramatically cut immigration, because they're running this absurdly high immigration program that's just forcing up rents, forcing up home prices. And effectively, it's a double whammy if you're a first home buyer, because you pay more in rent, which means you can't save a deposit quickly enough, and then also pushes up prices. So, this sort of interference, this artificial interference from the federal government needs to stop.
And I guess the other incentive too, if you're on the precipice of whether you can afford to buy a new home or whatever, is the fact that we were hearing yesterday that interest rates will probably be cut in the November sector there. So that's also an incentive. But again, it can sort of rebound just as quickly, can't it?
That's right, yeah. So unfortunately, interest rate cuts obviously lower your mortgage repayments, and that's great if you're already in. If you're looking to purchase, they tend to get capitalised into higher prices. So it doesn't help in the long term. And, most economists think that we'll probably get one more rate cut only. And so, you know, we've already had 3, we've got another one to go, then this 5% deposit scheme. But what this all ends up meaning is that home prices are going to rise, and probably fairly aggressively in the period ahead.
Okay, so what is the solution for someone or a couple wanting to get into the housing market? They think, no, this is just dead money renting. I'm sick of doing it. We want our own patch of land. Now, whether that be a unit in a high-rise or whatever, what is the ideal scenario for them? How can they get into the market?
Yeah, unfortunately, they're caught between a rock and a hard place, right? If you rent, you get absolutely, screwed over, and if you want to buy, you got to pay very high prices. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Look, my advice is just don't overextend yourselves too much, so that if something goes wrong, you end up having to sell and with negative equity and become a forced mortgagee. Like, always try and live within your means, but that's very hard in this expensive world that we live in.
All right. Well, not great. You got any good news for us, Leith?
Well, not really. Not on the housing front. Unfortunately, the housing market in Australia is diabolical. We've got, an unbelievably expensive market to rent and an unbelievably expensive market to buy, and a lot of this has been driven by poor government policy.
All right. Now, I know that actually, just hold on. I'll get Dave on the line here. He's got a question which I'm not going to be able to answer, but you will. You there, Dave?
Yeah, I just want. Do house prices drive up the CPI is one question, and if the CPI goes up, then the RBA is going to increase the interest rates, and we're going to be worse off.
Thanks, Dave. What's the answer to that, Leith?
Yeah, okay. So the price of established homes, so ones already built, don't factor into the CPI, but the cost of construction does, and also the cost of rents factors into the CPI. So obviously we've got rents rising strongly, and that's putting upward pressure on inflation, and the cost of constructing new homes has gone up significantly, so that's also put upward pressure on inflation.
All right, so hopefully that's answered that question, and thank God you were here to answer it, Leith, because that was way out of my tram tracks. Good on you. Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, no worries, Tony. Anytime.
All right, thank you. Leith Van Onselen joining us there, Chief Economist and Co-Founder of Macro Business. It's not good news, is it? Especially if you're trying to get into the market. And even if you've got a place at the moment and you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, well, prices are really good, so let's sell. But as Leith says, you've still got that massive stamp duty, which is a complete waste of money. And then you've got to actually buy another place, and you're paying top dollar for it. It's a real catch-22. Well, it's not even a catch-22 because you're behind the 8 ball, whichever way you look at it. 133